Last November, the Transportation Safety Administration summoned 25 airline executives here to Washington, D.C. for a secret briefing. They were told to prepare themselves for the unthinkable. There was growing evidence from intelligence agencies, including the CIA, that terrorists had plans to use shoulder-fired missiles against U.S. passenger planes.
I'm Mike Wallace.
I'm Morley Safer.
I'm Ed Bradley.
I'm Steve Croft.
I'm Leslie Stahl. Those stories, Clinton and Dole, Andy Rooney, and Dan Rather with the latest on the war in Iraq, tonight on 60 Minutes.
They're small, cheap, and deadly, and there are thousands of them out there. They're shoulder-fired missiles. The military calls them man-pads. And according to the nation's security services, they pose a major threat to everyone who flies. Though the intelligence community says it knows of no specific plot, the war in Iraq has only increased the urgency and fear that one of these weapons in the hands of one terrorist could bring down an airliner right here in the United States. The effects of such an act beyond the loss of life could be devastating. They are a lethal blend of simplicity and sophistication. Just 5 feet long and 35 pounds. Like the Stinger missiles we gave the Afghans. They can be aimed and fired in a matter of seconds. Reaching altitudes of 15,000 feet, their heat-seeking warhead will chase a jet engine at Mach 2, twice the speed of sound. A missile fired from 1 mile away will hit its target in 3.5 seconds. Senator Chuck Schumer of New York believes they pose an imminent threat for which we are unprepared.
What we know is that 27 terrorist groups, including Al-Qaeda, have these weapons. We know they fit in the trunk of your car, and so someone could drive, get on a rooftop near an airport, go into a woods near an airport and fire one of these. If I were a terrorist, this would be probably the easiest way to kill hundreds of people and scare tens of millions.
Al-Qaeda's own tapes show terrorists training with shoulder-fired missiles. Security services believe the stage is set for an attempt against a U.S. commercial airliner. Last November, the Transportation Safety Administration summoned 25 airline executives here to Washington, D.C. for a secret briefing. They were told to prepare themselves for the unthinkable. There was growing evidence from intelligence agencies, including the CIA, that terrorists had plans to use shoulder-fired missiles against U.S. passenger planes.
The atmosphere in the room was dead serious.
Admiral James Loy heads the new Transportation Security Administration, part of Homeland Security.
We had a number of man-pads literally in the room so that they could get a touch-feel sense of what it was that we were talking about. And the rapt attention shown by every member of that airline executive group was a palpable thing in the room.
If there were any doubts in that room, they were dispelled 3 weeks later when suspected Al-Qaeda terrorists fired 2 Russian-made missiles at an Israeli charter plane taking off from Mombasa, Kenya. They missed their target, but made their point. Everyone is vulnerable. Do you agree with the American intelligence community that says the likelihood is that these weapons have already been smuggled into the country?
The likelihood, the possibility, of course, is always there. But we simply do not have evidence that there's any kind of an imminent threat posed here in the United States.
No specific threat, but plenty of potential.
The evidence is a very real concern about the inventory of these things worldwide.
There are a lot of them out there loose.
There are a lot of them out there loose.
Ironically, some of those rogue missiles were made in the USA. In the late 80s, the U.S. gave Afghan rebels almost 1,000 Stinger missiles. This high-tech gift to a low-tech army helped break the will of the Soviet occupation. Those missiles, along with thousands of Soviet and Chinese copies, were available for as little as $5,000 each. they've given terrorists a nasty advantage. So far, they've attacked passenger planes in Africa and Central America.
Since 1978, there have been 35 attacks on commercial aircraft. In terms of a success rate, 24 of those aircraft have actually come down, the loss of about 640 lives.
Several weeks ago, hundreds of armored troops swarmed London's Heathrow Airport following intelligence reports that a terrorist missile attack was in the works.
If you had a weapon system like this, you don't even need to be near the airport to engage that target.
John Berescove knows firsthand the damage shoulder-fired missiles can do. He served on a Stinger team in the U.S. Army and trained others to use the missile as well. It looks like a fairly sophisticated weapon, is it?
No, it's incredibly simple. It's a very simple weapon system to operate. It's very simple to train somebody how to use the weapon, and it's very easy to engage an aircraft and shoot an aircraft down with a weapon. It's not a complicated system.
The military has dealt with this problem for years by outfitting its aircraft with flare dispensers. The heat from the flares attracts the heat-seeking sensor on the incoming missile and throws it off course. Air Force One and some private executive planes are outfitted with more sophisticated countermeasures that use lasers to fool approaching missiles. No U.S. airliners are equipped, but El Al planes are. Several companies, including an Israeli group, Rafael, have begun to market competing versions of the anti-missile system. Given the speed of the missiles, the system must work automatically and instantly. It bypasses the pilot?
The pilot doesn't even know. The aircrew doesn't even know. We don't want them to know.
Patrick Bar-Avi is leading the project.
I mean, we sat down with pilots in Israel and asked them, do you want to know? While taking off, there's a missile chasing you. And they said, we don't want to know. We are so busy flying the aircraft, we don't want to know anything. And there's nothing we can do about it.
At more than $1 million apiece, onboard protection is not cheap. Retrofitting all 6,000 planes in the American commercial fleet with electronic countermeasures could cost up to $10 billion. And that's exactly what Senator Schumer and some of his colleagues are proposing to spend in a new bill. Do the airlines want these systems on board?
The airlines very much want the systems on board, but the airlines are nearly bankrupt. And if we wait for them to pay for it, we'll wait too long.
That leaves just one alternative. Taxpayers would have to foot the bill. The Bush administration has yet to commit any money to the plan.
Given the price tag, I mean, in the real world, is that going to happen?
I don't know if it's going to happen. I think the right thing for us to do is to continue the methodical study process that has been undertaken by the National Security Council, not with years of study to come, but with weeks of study to come.
For now, Homeland Security is working to secure airport perimeters, in particular takeoff and landing zones. With its gradual climb and descent, a jumbo jet makes a fat target. Steve Luckey, head of security for the Airline Pilots Association, says there are things a pilot can do to at least reduce the threat.
If we really want to put the power all the way up, you're going to increase that attitude, and that airplane is going to go like this, and it's going to be out of that threat envelope much quicker, much sooner.
Luckey should know. He dodged missiles as a Vietnam fighter pilot. He says with a jumbo jet, not every hit is necessarily fatal.
Large aircraft are fairly good at sustaining damage and still flying. I mean, they're made to fly on one engine, for example.
That may be of little comfort. Senator Schumer and others in Congress feel the flying public deserves the best defense a lot of money can buy.
It is a large expense, but just think of the expense if, God forbid, even one plane were shot down successfully by one of these missiles on American soil. People would stop flying, the economy would go right down into the clinker, and we'd lose that amount of money in a month or two.
Some of Senator Schumer's Republican colleagues are equally concerned. Just last week, Republican Congressman John Mica, chairman of the House Aviation Subcommittee, said that he went into a closed hearing with intelligence agencies skeptical about a possible missile attack. What he heard in the hearing convinced him that, quote, "we cannot afford not to act."